Hello, I'm Mark Arvelli, Vice President of Personal Insurance at Walsh Duffield. We know that purchasing car insurance seems simple, but once you start digging in, making sure you're properly covered, it can be overwhelming. That is the value of working with an independent insurance agent like Walsh Duffield. We help you navigate and understand all of the different options that are out there. I'm happy to introduce my colleague, Steve Mayo, to walk you through some of the key informational points that you should know about your auto insurance. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mark. This is a program we put together about 12 years ago and had been presenting as a lunch and learn. We thought this would be a good time to put it in video format. We are going to do this in two segments. Today we will be discussing auto insurance, and then shortly we will come out with another video on homeowners insurance. Our goal today is to educate you so that you understand what the different coverages are within your policy and also understand the limits as they're presented on your policy. There are three pieces really to an auto policy. One is liability coverage, where if you hit somebody and injure them or damage their vehicle, you'll have coverage there. There's a second piece that there's actually two coverages that are for injuries that you may sustain. And then the third is for damage to your automobile. We're going to start with the liability portion. There are two ways that you could have your liability set up. One is referred to as a split limit of liability. It splits out your bodily injury and your property damage. Within that bodily injury coverage on a split limit basis, you do have a per person limitation. So you can see here, I'm using this example because this is what I quite often see is that people have 100,000 of coverage per person, 300,000 per accident for bodily injury, and then 50,000 for property damage. Most people will look at this and think that they have $300,000 of coverage for bodily injury. And technically you do if you injure 3 people and all 3 people sue you. But let's say that I'm the only one in my car, you hit me, I'm seriously injured, and I sue you. You have $100,000 worth of coverage because that is your per person limitation. I could then sue you for assets you have or for future earnings. Property damage is just that, it's property that you damage. That would be my vehicle or if you run into a building. My preference is a combined single limit. It combines the bodily injury and property damage into one limit. In this case, I'm using $300,000. The benefit of this is it does eliminate that bodily injury per person limitation. So that example before, I'm the only one in my car, you hit me, I'm injured, I sue you, you'd have $300,000 worth of coverage. Again, no per person limitation. I would actually encourage you to look to have a $500,000 combined single limit on your policy. $300,000 just isn't enough, and $100,000 under a split limit certainly is not enough. The next piece would be coverages for injuries that you may sustain. The first is personal injury coverage. You may have heard how New York State is a no-fault state. This personal injury is often referred to as no-fault coverage. It's for injuries you sustain regardless of who is at fault for the accident. So let's say again, you hit me, I'm injured, I break my arm, no long-term impact on that. I will have my medical expenses and any lost wages I may have as a result of that injury paid by my insurance company. If you are injured, your injuries would be covered under your personal injury. This goes as far as if you were to slam your thumb in the car door and go to the hospital, those hospital bills will be paid by your personal injury. Another important piece to remember in this is that this coverage will apply for you regardless if you just go off the road, hit a deer, any type of injury you may sustain while operating your vehicle. The second piece of coverage for protection for you is uninsured, underinsured motorists. This is a combined coverage, but it really is two separate things. Uninsured would be, I hit you, you're injured, and I have no insurance. Your immediate medical expenses and lost wages are taken care of by your personal injury protection, But let's say that you have a long-term issue as a result of this and you file suit against me. Again, I have no insurance, I have no assets, I probably don't have any future earnings that you can go after. You still go through with the lawsuit, and whatever you're awarded, your insurance company will pay you under the uninsured motorist coverage. The second piece is underinsured motorist coverage. Let's say that I do have insurance, but I have a very low limit of liability, let's say $50,000 per person. Again, you are seriously injured, it's my fault. I've got $50,000 of coverage. I don't have assets for you to go after. I don't have future earnings that could be garnished. You go through with the lawsuit. Let's say that you are awarded $200,000. My company is going to pay you $50,000. And then if you have sufficient limits on your uninsured, underinsured coverage, your insurance company would pay you the additional $150,000. So my recommendation here is to have the $500,000 of liability coverage on a combined single limit basis, and then also $500,000 on the uninsured, underinsured coverage. This gives you an example of what I just stated about where the coverage is, how yours would come into play for the uninsured or underinsured example. The last piece is coverage for your vehicle. There's two pieces to that. There's collision coverage and comprehensive coverage. Collision coverage would be you striking another object, or if somebody hits you while you're parked and they leave the scene without leaving a note. So those would be collision coverages. The other piece is comprehensive coverage, which is fire, theft, hitting an animal, vandalism, tree falling, hail damage, those type of things. Both of these coverage will entail having a deductible. The deductible is pretty self-explanatory. It's the amount that you will have to pay out of your pocket when there is damage to your vehicle and you're getting it repaired. The important thing to look at here with your deductibles is, can you handle a higher deductible? Anytime you see an article in the paper, the first thing they mention to reduce your insurance expenses is to increase your deductible, which that is true. That will reduce your premium. But you've got to look at, can I handle a higher deductible? I have a $200 deductible now. If I go to a $500 deductible, am I comfortable with having to take $500 out of my pocket in the event of damage to my car? Part two of that is, what is the savings? I'm going to have $300 more on my end for a total of $500 deductible. What is my savings? If it's only $15 a year, then it's probably not worth taking that chance. If it's $50 a year, then you've got to look at it. $200 out of pocket versus $500 out of pocket, $50, $60 savings a year. Do I want to take that chance? So that's really the piece for deductibles. Credit scoring, I wanted to address because people always ask, why does credit have a bearing on my insurance premiums? And unfortunately, it has a bigger bearing these days than it did 10 years ago. Insurance companies have looked at their data and they find that people with higher credit scores have fewer claims than people with lower credit scores. You might wonder, why would that be? Well, let's say that you have a very high credit score. Your brakes start squeaking. You go and you get your brakes fixed. I have a average to below average credit score. My brakes start squeaking. I need to wait a paycheck, 2 paychecks, 3 paychecks before I go get my brakes fixed. We're each driving down the road. Car in front of us stops short. You stop on a dime because you have brand new brakes. My brakes take a little longer to kick in. I hit the car in front of me and therefore have a claim. So the statistics do prove that out. So this is just another reason for you to monitor your credit and try and get your score increased if you are in a moderate level right now. The auto insurance questions we have are usually asked during the program, and here are a number of the ones that we get. And for time purposes, I'm just going to address the first, which is, my child is getting licensed. Should I put them on my policy or have them get their own policy? My answer to this is always, put them on your policy. If you are getting them their own vehicle, you should title and register it in your own name and insure it on your policy, listing your child as the driver. The reason for that is for your child to go off on their own, have their own policy is just going to be extremely expensive and really unaffordable. The concern people then have is, what about the liability piece? That's true. You have additional liability. You've got a newly licensed driver out there driving their own vehicle, having a good old time. So I recommend that if you don't already have an umbrella policy, that you get an umbrella policy. An umbrella policy will provide an extra layer of liability over your auto insurance and your homeowner's insurance. These policies start at $1 million of liability coverage and can be increased in $1 million increments. So let's say you follow my instructions and get the 500,000 combined single limit on your auto liability, and then you get $1 million umbrella as well. You then have $1.5 million of coverage in the event that you're sued as a result of a car accident. I hope that you found this to be beneficial. We are always available for questions, and Mark will close out here, but please stay safe, stay well, and drive safely.
Thank you, Steve. Wow, ton of useful information. I'm literally on the edge of my seat in anticipation for the homeowner segment, thinking about exposures like Airbnbs, e-bikes, drones. Am I covered while working from home? I don't know. I guess you better stay tuned for the next segment. But just remember, Walsh Duffield is here to help make the right choices to keep yourself and your family safe and well. If you'd like more information or an unbiased personal review of your existing personal insurance coverage, feel free to visit walshduffield.com or reach out to me directly at any time using the contact information shown. Enjoy the rest of your day.